You're kicking it with G on your favorite station.
The perfect station.
92 KELZ, the only station with new music, new artists, new sound.
We have Miss Alissa R. Jones in the building. How you doing?
Hello. I'm doing good.
Look, I'm just like, come on now. It's Valentine's Day. I know you should be excited.
Look, it's Valentine's Day. She got a hubby with her. Look.
I know. Today's a special day.
I ain't want to throw it
he's
out
been
there.
missing all the interviews all week.
See?
He's trying to make up. He's trying to make up. He's like, you know what, babe? Let me do something special for you.
I know.
We're so happy to have you here with us.
Thank you so much. I'm
So-
so happy to be here.
You have an organization, and it is called Survivors with Voices Foundation.
Yes.
But before we get into that, can you kind of give us your journey to starting the organization?
Like, who is Miss Alissa R. Jones?
Man. Woo! So, the journey is, started when I was 8 years old. I was, in a two-parent home, happy little girl, and then my parents decided to get a divorce. And if you know anything about a divorce, when your parents go through a divorce, the kids kind of go through that divorce with you because you got mom pulling on you saying, hate your dad. And then your dad's like, I didn't do anything wrong. So, and for me, I was a daddy's little girl. And so at that particular time, a lot of emotions was in the air because my mother, for whatever reason, did everything she could to keep me from my dad. At that particular moment, the house became a one-parent income home. And so with that, my mother suffered from financial instability, allowed a man to come into the home, move into our basement. And at 11 years old, I was molested and sexually abused for about a year and a half. That caused a lot of emotional time for me, but also, during that time, it took my voice and I was into silence because at that particular time, he threatened to kill me and my mom if I didn't comply with his demands. And so at that particular time, I felt like I was really saving me and my mom by continuing to go along with that. And it wasn't until I shared with a friend of mine, her name is Gaia Wilson, and we're still friends to this day, about what was going on. And it was the day after I tried to take my life.
I'm about to say, that's a lot for you. Wasn't even a teenager yet.
I was not even a teenager, but I wanted the abuse to stop, and that was the only way I knew that it could stop if I'd taken my life. At that particular time, I had lost my grandmother early on, and my grandmother, I was very spoiled by her. And so I felt like at that time, if I taken my life, I can go be with my grandmother because I know if she was living, she would have never let that happen to me. And so with sharing it with my friend Gaia, she had came into the bathroom that day and knew something wasn't right. She knew something wasn't right. And so when I shared with her, as a little girl, you remember the little pinky promise, and I said, I'm going to share this with you. I told her what I tried to do the night before, and I said, you can't tell anybody because he had said he would kill me and my mom, and we pinky promised. So as I went back to class, I remember sitting there, and Gaia wasn't in the class when I got back. And next thing I knew, I heard my name on the PA system, Alissa Lee, come to the office. And I looked at the seat and I seen she was gone. And I said, oh my goodness, she told somebody. Yeah. And so as I walked to the counselor's office, the counselor was Mr. Scobie. And I never forget him because at that moment and at that time, even though I walked in there, I remember looking at Gaia and she was crying with tears. And she looked at me and she said, if you're not going to be a voice, I'm going to be a voice for you. And she shared with Mr. Scobie what I had been going through within that year and a half. And from that moment, I felt like I was set free because he called my mother and they made the man move out of the home. But in that moment when my mom got there and she sat there with the counselor, and as she learned as what was going on, she gave me that look. You know, that look your moms give you, like, you know, why are you sharing what has went on in our home?
Yep.
Because that stigma of what goes on in the house stays in the house. And so as I got that look from my mother, she said to me, and I'll never forget it, she said, all the things that he used to buy us, it will no longer take place. And what she didn't know at that moment, she pushed me back into silence. But with that, she didn't know that my virginity did not mean anything with the material things that he was buying. And so with that, it caused a lot of hatred from my mother. I built up a lot of resentment because I blamed her for my abuse. How I got started in the organization was in 2010. I was angry at my mother. I had became her power of attorney, and I had stole money from her because my mother had loved money. And so essentially I was just wanting her to feel the pain that I felt when I was abused, and I just wanted her to go back and save me. And at that moment, I understood that I held her to an impossible task. So we settled for not speaking for a year. And when I met my husband, I remember me and my mother hadn't spoken, and he helped me find my mother. And I remember when we were at the apartment complex going door to door, he took me door to door, knocking on the door. And when I finally found my mother, she was in a wheelchair, and she opened the door and just burst out in tears because she had missed me and I had missed her as well. That night, me and her was able to have a conversation, and I told her how much I hated her because she did not protect me. And what I learned in that moment is that she too had been sexually abused by the hands of her brother at age 12, and then later on had been sexually abused by her brother-in-law. What I didn't realize is at that time she didn't know how to protect me because didn't nobody protect her. We were able to rebuild a relationship, and at that time I did not know I only had 3 years left. My mother passed away in October of 2013. And so with the organization, we started in her honor to just really tell people that forgiveness is not for you, but it is for you, and it's not for the other person. And if I would have forgave my mom a lot sooner, I would have had a lot more time with her. And so that's how Survivors with Voices Foundation was birthed.
I definitely do not want to rush past the fact that commend your husband just for pushing you to find your mother, because there's so many people that you meet, once they automatically hear that people done you wrong, they just like throw it away. Let's just not for him to bring that back and to show like this is what's right. There's something that you needed to heal, like you needed that closure.
I did. I really did, and I'm grateful to him for that because I was settled. We hadn't talked for what, babe, like maybe a year or so prior to meeting him, and it was definitely even during that transition, I remember that when I got the call, my mother had been sick and in and out the hospital, and I was a loan officer with Lennar Homes, and my husband would tell you I was always working all the time. And at that time, she had called me on a Sunday, and they were about to give her surgery, and she had congestive heart failure, and she asked me to move her hospital. And I got to work that morning, and she asked me, that was the last thing she said. She said, "You promise?" And I said, "I promise." And she said, "I love you." I said, "I love you too." Got up that morning, went to a builder meeting, and I blame myself for losing my mom because I did not make that call, because I got so inundated with work, working for a builder community. So can you imagine how many loans I had on my plate that I had to get done? And I got that call at work, and they told me she was on the table fighting for her life. And at that moment, I just went to that conversation on a Sunday, and I was like, I did not make that call. So me and my husband rushed to get to Ohio, and it was crazy because one of my clients that was working at the airline at that time got me and my whole family passes and flew us there immediately. For 7 days, my mother was in a coma. And I kept believing and praying to God that she would come to. And it wasn't until her kidneys started failing and that me and my brother had to make a decision to pull the plug. And this is when I found out that no job is worth the time with your family, because my husband would tell you during those 7 days, I was still working on loans. Because my mother was 69, and at the age of 70, when she turned 70, her life insurance would go down to 5,000 versus 15,000. And I knew if I didn't close these loans, because my job had told me if I did not get the loans in my pipeline done, they would not pay me. And I made significantly good money at that time. So while 7 days my mom is in a coma, I'm sitting there on my laptop finishing these loans. And that was my moment to know and understand that a job does not become before family, and you can't get that time back. So literally until the time we pulled the plug, I was working on loans, and my mother died October 16th, 2013, and her 70th birthday was November 1st that year.
Wow. I think, first of all, I want to commend you on being able to even share the story.
Oh, thank you very much.
And there are so many different places where you had to continuously be a survivor.
Right.
And not so much survive to get out of the situation of being abused, but you had to survive the situation to repair. You had to survive the situation to provide. There were so many different patterns of being a survivor in your story. How does that reflected in what you do now?
Man, because I think I'm continuously in survival mode. Even with doing this event, I think it's been so many obstacles and things that have came along to help and not make this event happen. So I feel like every day is a continuous survival mode, and what you do especially when you're pouring into other people and you're trying to make an impact and change the lives of other people, sometimes your own situations, people don't know what you go through personally and behind the scenes to really make an impact on their life because of what you believe in, and that's the season that I'm in right now.
Wow.
Man, that's a lot.
It is.
I'm just trying to process it all, just to be able to just pull yourself mentally from that, you know what I mean?
Right.
To be able to continue on down the path, actually continue to reopen this wound every time, because you have to talk about it over and over and over again, you know what I mean? And getting people to actually open up is a big thing right now. I guess that's one of the first things, I guess, was accepting it, to move past it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so many people actually falling victim of, even though they know the consequences, the outcome, still going down the same path.
Right.
And I really want to know what is it that survivors with voices, like, what are you sustaining them to keep people out of that path so they won't go back into it? Like, you can get all the resources, but then
and to be honest with you, that's hard to do, because it really starts with that individual and making a decision whether they want to continue or that. And even with this event, the Let Me Love You tour, what I found is a lot of survivors will continue to get in toxic relationships because that's normal for them. That's comfortable for them. And so it's just really understanding what a healthy relationship is, and that's what the Let Me Love You tour is going to do. Even myself, speaking to my situation, being in toxic relationships and the things that I've been through, it became normal for me. And it wasn't until, looking at a marriage like my father's, or looking at, some of his stepfather has a successful marriage, and looking at some of the individuals that have healthy relationships, what does that look like? Mm-hmm. You really have to make a decision that, and recognize what is unhealthy and what is healthy, and be able to really take in the resources that somebody provides you to make a change.
Mm-hmm. I know this is all about, but the question that I have is I have for you, kind of like you and your husband. Like,
okay.
What are some of, like, it just like,
look, he was like, wait a minute,
because it goes on both sides, because you have to recognize the red flags from both sides.
Right.
Do you have any red flags that you need to be aware of when you're dealing with those situations, whether they come from a male perspective or a female perspective?
Well, for me, I think a lot of red flags and that might have been there for my husband that he ignored was my baggage that I brought into the marriage. And I said this on another radio interview. Throughout our relationship, our marriage isn't perfect, of course, but throughout our relationship, we've gotten in arguments where he has literally said to me, "Let me love you," because I have a wall up. I have things, and I'm like, I'm not going to be vulnerable with you because I'm not going to let you hurt me again. And my mom was the same way. I heard that growing up from my father, where he would just literally tell my mom, "Let me love you," but she was so broken and damaged, and I didn't realize it then. I didn't understand it until she shared with me. But my dad, we always tell me, "Look, I tried to love your mom. I really did." And even after my mom, this event is done in his honor and his legacy because he was married for 30 years after my mother. And even though it wasn't my mother, I loved the way that he loved his wife. He took care of her until she was bedridden, until he literally died. And actually, tomorrow is his anniversary. He died last year on Valentine's Day in 2019. And the ironic story is him and his wife was so connected. She actually passed on his birthday, April 19th of 2019. And so, it's just really, that's really been how I overcome and go, just being encouraged by, other people that have been blessed to be in my life.
I think something that you said was that communication part. And you actually are going to be talking about that during this event. That there was a level of communication that you may not have had in the beginning, but him being a wise man had to understand, okay, this is how she navigates. Let me sit back and watch how she navigates, and then let's open up this conversation. And there's a level of vulnerability you had to have to be like, okay, this is where I'm at. Let me tell you how I really function.
Sometimes I don't even communicate that. I mean, one of my struggles has been, and my husband's laughing because I am a person that, how you want to put it? I'm doing good. What I watch my mother do is she goes into silence. And us as women, sometimes when we don't feel like we're being heard, we internalize and then we don't talk about it. And that has been my struggle. He's a communicator. I am not. Mm-hmm. And so he would try to talk to me. And I'm like, you know what? I ain't even doing it. I'm not talking about it. But that's why I feel like some of the topics and the people that I've chose to be on the panel, this isn't just for individuals. This is for myself as well. Mm-hmm. And this is these are some of the topics that you see that I have struggled with in my own marriage. This is really going to be a transparent event because a lot of people have gone through, and I'm not going to sit up here and say me and our marriage is perfect because it is not. I have struggled with some of the past hurts that I have been through to communicate. I have struggled with what a foundation of a marriage is. Mm-hmm. I haven't seen a healthy relationship besides my stepfather. So with me being raised after the age of 8 by my mother and going through what I've been through, I've seen the unhealthy side of relationships. Yeah. And so I haven't been in the atmosphere in watching my dad afar. He instilled in me some self-love tips that we'll be sharing, but also I was hard-headed. Yeah. Even though he tried to pour into me and share into me, I'm like, Dad, I'm going to do it my own way, whatever. And it wasn't until he passed away that I really recognized everything that he tried to teach me about love, about marriage, about relationships and things like that. And so it's still a struggle for me today, but I'm open to learn, and I believe that this event is more so for me than anybody else, and I recognize that a lot of survivors in the organization struggle with the same thing that I have struggled with a relationship.
I definitely feel like everybody struggled from that because me personally, I didn't even know what real love looked like. I had to learn it. Like, you just don't know what it is. 80% of people don't know what it is. They've never seen it, don't know. Like you said, we've only seen the negative side.
It's painful.
Is it?
Yeah.
Like,
it's just like working out.
It really is. A lot of patience.
Like a lot of patience, a lot of pain. You got to tear down that muscle to make it bigger. Mm-hmm. That's exactly what it is.
Definitely do. And that's the whole thing. Like, only 80%, I feel like only 80% of people have really, I mean, not 80, but 20% of people really have seen like a positive side of everything to even mold yourself into something better. Because we can say, oh yeah, this is what you're supposed to do. Everybody nitpicks and they see it, but
Right.
oh, that's TV. That's not really real. They don't really know.
Exactly.
But when you in it and you got the other person stepping on them buttons, and you got to really just
If you see
Take a
love,
break.
if you think love is perfect, you really gotta. That's Hollywood. It's scripted.
Yes.
Right, right.
Definitely, 'cause
Right.
it's very messy, very messy, very patient. You can't explain it until you get into it and be really willing to work through it.
honestly, I talk to Charmaine about this all the time. For it's like I feel like just within this decade is the whole "I love you" phase came out. I didn't really hear "I love you" a lot really growing. I mean, yeah, but the whole now when you get really, "Oh, I love you," but like you go every time somebody leave, "I love you," I love you. Like that wasn't a big thing back 10 years ago, and it's kind of trickling into it now where people are starting to open up with feelings, but still going
Right.
over the rails.
Right.
So because I kind of want to walk through what this is like and kind of get the background of tomorrow's event so people can know what to expect. So we talked about communication. I really want to delve back into that a little bit later between the both of you, because communication is probably the biggest thing, especially within my generation, that tends to break a lot of people up.
Facts.
And you have something that you guys are going to be talking about for better or for worse, sickness and health, surviving financial control, surviving, and then financial control.
That's a big one too.
That alone, the sickness and in health.
Right.
Because when some people get really healthy and they get on
Right.
their vegan fast and stuff and they looking fine, they be like, "I'm too good for you, I'm gone."
Right.
Or then they're sick and then they're too needy and the other
Right.
person can't handle it.
Right.
And then the financial thing where you're seeing even now with my generation, like I said, there's this mistrust and then there's lack of communication, which is establishing that mistrust.
Right.
And so people are like, well, we can't share our money because I provide this and you provide that.
Or I
Can
make
y'all,
more than you.
Yeah,
You using my money.
can y'all kind of talk about that as far as what we're gonna get the feedback from this event? Because I feel like only married folks can really talk about all those different factors.
Well, I'm excited about the couple that's going to be sharing about that, and it's John and Raquel Walden. And she's a flight attendant, and what happened was that she got really sick and could not work. And I'm not going to tell all of their story because you got to come to the event.
Got to be there.
But in that season, her husband had to step up and take care of everything financially. He did not do it willingly, but they were able to get through that. And what I love about them is they're 20 years strong, and some of the things that they struggled with within that, they were able to get past that, and now their relationship is amazing. So I'm excited for you guys to hear from them, because that was a season where she was really sick and could not work at all, and he had to step up, and looking at the savings dwindle away, and it's like, wait a minute. So yeah,
That's a big thing.
That is huge.
I've been there, but at the same time though, like if we up all these years, we been working like even if it was just on my income, I know with my income we can sustain everything. But you're working, so we up all these years, we just stacking up and doubling. So if you was to happen to fall, I should not be criticizing you and faulting you because you fell off right now.
But
It
that's-
happens.
but
Bumps in the
that's a-
road happen.
But that's
and you
your
say
understanding.
that, right? But many relationships fall because of that.
It's TV.
And then if you
Yeah.
guys, like, within your relationship have a different understanding and different relationship with money, because you
Oh, yeah,
we
came
do.
from
Oh, yeah, that's a
where
different-
you saw, like you even said, your mom was really big on having to survive. It
Right.
was where the money is coming from.
Right.
And then you had that, like, I
Well,
gotta
I'ma tell
hustle.
I'm gonna tell y'all about to laugh, because I was upset when I became my mom's power of attorney, and just to understand what I went through, because she brought a man into the home to help with the mortgage. When I tell you guys I went to sell my mom's house, I told you guys I was her power of attorney. I was so upset because she only owed $22,000 and the mortgage was only $200. So when I tell y'all I was hot mad, when I was like, Mom, you couldn't handle $200 in a mortgage? But, that was my take on that.
Wow.
Yeah.
Hey, you gotta say back then, different strokes with different folks.
Yes,
There's a whole
definitely.
That is so okay. So then you have making marriage work as a blended family. Do you all
Yes.
have a blended family?
We do.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Look at everybody.
She's looking like say something.
Well, the kids, they're pretty much grown now.
Amen.
Going through those,
Oh, well, y'all good then. It shouldn't be no.
No, we good now. We weren't good
Yeah,
then.
back then it was a battle. It was a battle. You know, you have your own ideology on how a person who is not a biological father or mother should treat said child that is a stepchild, and you have those kind of feelings. And once again, it comes back to communication as well. And any walls built up and what you believe and what you don't believe can play a major impact on how the household is ran.
Wow.
Hey, he's speaking from a true husband standpoint, my brother. I feel you. I know what you're talking about. Hey, it is like that, though. You have to communicate, because, like you said, you was raised different. I was raised different. How I see things go, how you see things go.
And then you're
We're gonna have to
dealing with, the baby mamas, the baby daddies that.
Not all the time.
Oh,
Not all the time.
We're talking about this situation. I don't know about y'all's situation,
It's an
but
a la carte thing.
yes, yes.
He's just like, you know what? Let me just sit
Yes,
right here.
but we had to deal with that, and and it made it hard on the kids because a lot of times when you get into that friction of other people and there's new people involved, nobody really thinks about the kids in that situation, and it becomes a battle where I'm gonna keep you from your daughter because you're not with me anymore, and even though that's the blind side reason of it, they come up with so many other reasons to why, and so and then a lot of times on the father side, really men don't have to deal with that because a lot of the fathers might not even be in the child's life. So then you have those children that are resentful because stepdad is there and the real father isn't there, so they act out accordingly. So balancing a blended family is a really huge topic, and we're excited to talk about that at the event.
How important is it for you to have the let me love you when it comes to the children, as far as the other person, your spouse's children?
Well, that's a really good question because a lot of times I feel like, if you have that child that, for instance, is with the mother or whatever, and the mother doesn't like you, you have to come into that situation like, let me love you, but you have to also step up and show them that, you do love them, you do care about their well-being. So that was an amazing question because I believe with my daughter, Nadia, that I had to really take out the equation of her mother and look at my daughter and really step into that situation, because in the beginning I felt like that a lot of the things that her mother did I held against my daughter, and I really had to realize that it wasn't her and really step into it and build my own relationship with her. So,
And that's one of the things we can come, because I have a blended family as well, just being able to be the positive all the time and never speak on the negative.
It's hard.
They might not get it at the beginning, but as they get older, they realize things. They were like, okay, well, yeah, that was made it a thing. So I definitely understand that.
yeah.
How was that? I know we got to transition, but I really have a question because you have an organization that is for the survivors.
Right.
How is that when it comes to establishing that relationship with your daughter? Because how many daughters do you have?
I have two.
Okay. And one is your biological.
Correct.
Okay. How was that for you establishing relationships with your daughters based off of the relationship that you had with your mother? What work did you have to go through?
Oh, I had to go through a lot of work because I think in the beginning with my daughter, I was so focused on working, providing, that it took time away from her. And that's the same exact thing that my mother did because she worked all the time. She didn't really was able to recognize when I was going through what I was going through when she would come home and I'm sitting in a tub in the middle of the day, because she was working, trying to provide, she really didn't notice those things. And so for me, my career has changed a lot, and I'm home more so now than what I was before. My financial income has changed. And so, but what I realized with the financial income, that it didn't mean anything as far as it came to time. And so with both of my girls, it's amazing because where we're at now, our older daughter moved from Ohio to Texas, so she's literally a couple doors away from us.
Wow.
And then we have our 16-year-old, which is the last baby in the house. And so with him working from home and me with the profession that I do now, we're able to keep our eyes on her a little bit more and a little bit closer and stop the little boyfriend at antics when we can, to really protect her in a sense. And so I really had to recognize the relationship I had with my mother to change the narrative with my daughter. My daughter knows my testimony. She knows what I went through as well, and both of my daughters do. And so being able to protect them from that, we can't protect them from everything, but we can also encourage them by what we've been through to prevent them from going through what we've been through.
Definitely.
That's amazing. I think that is beautiful. And I'm saying that is because this event is so much more than just here. This is the topic. We're going to talk about the topic.
Right.
No. Some people need to know, what was your journey? What are you actively going through? How are you keeping yourself accountable to make sure that cycles aren't being repeated?
Right.
And that, especially within our community, is starting to create a new narrative around the family unit, around how to love and have healthy relationships.
Right.
So I think that these topics are very important, and I think this event is very important for our community.
We sacrificing doing the event, I would tell you that right now. Oh man, we have made some serious sacrifices, so I don't think people understand how much this means to me in honor of my dad, just to be able to celebrate him, a year after his passing. I had an emotional breakdown earlier because I just remember like it was yesterday getting that call. And it was crazy because I talked to him the week before. I was supposed to go see him, and I just felt like with that phone call, all of that was taken from me. So just to be able to honor his legacy, I don't think people understand how much I'm sacrificing personally, just to make sure that it happens in his honor. But I'm really excited about everybody that jumped on board and is being a part of it, and hearing my heart in this. I really want to thank Adrienne Bell for stepping up and jumping into the vision when I first told her about it last year, and Don Paul, who will be hosting the event. She's been with me since day one, since I started the organization, and Latoya has been with me since day one, pushing me, encouraging me, even when there was times I wanted to give up and say, I can't do it anymore. I took 2 years off, and just to come back and let this be the first event that I was doing, I'm excited about it, and thank everybody that has helped me make it happen.
How can people get involved, and how can they help you grow?
They can get involved by just reaching out to me at ajones@survivorswithvoices.org. I'm always looking for chapter presidents in different cities. We have 8 cities right now with amazing chapter presidents that holds the meetings and stuff that we're doing, so they can get involved. And if you know a survivor that is going through, and we have connections to a lot of resources that can help them through the emotional pitfalls of being abused, that we could connect them to. So that's how they can help and just be involved with the movement. One of the biggest things that I found is I kept silent for 23 years. And once I shared my testimony, for me, and what has been my driving force was after I shared my testimony, a young lady came up to me and she said, I was going to commit suicide today, and I heard your testimony. And just that moved me, that I had to create a movement so people could share their testimony. It's one thing to know that it happened to you, but to share and understanding that your testimony isn't for you, but it's for that person that's going through right now. And you could just save somebody's life by sharing your testimony instead of holding it in.
Yeah, I think that there's different levels of strength to being able to share that story.
Right.
And as I said, I think this is also very beneficial for our community, and to be able to see how it's not just you, because a lot of times we do just see the woman alone, but to see that your spouse is rallying beside you, sharing that story as well, having voices not just for the survivors, but those that love the survivors.
Right.
And so to have an event that's saying, hey, let me love you. Let me have another reason to have another conversation with you.
Yes.
To open up another door.
Yes.
I think that is a beautiful thing.
Thank you.
Can you tell us the details of the event, where it's going to be at, what time?
Hey, now you're singing my language. The event starts at 6:30 with red carpet media. The event starts promptly at 7:30. So I'm going to say this. Please be on time. Ooh. It's at the Hess Club in the Galleria. We're excited about that because they are one of our sponsors. When we talked to them about coming on board for the event, they love the idea and really stepped up and been helping us make this a beautiful event. So yeah, we're excited about all the speakers that's going to take place. We even have a young lady, Kenya Nicole, talking about narcissistic tendencies, and that's really been a really big thing. People that are, in narcissistic relationships, and so we're glad to be able to bring somebody to talk about that. But we're just excited about all the couples, and everybody's been asking me, hey Alissa, why on Valentine's Day? That's because that's when I lost my father, and we just want to do something different on Valentine's Day. Everybody can go to the movies, everybody can go to dinner, but just do something different. Learn about how to make your relationship healthy, how to get out that toxic relationship, how to really build yourself to let somebody love you after you've been abused and after you have that wall up, and learn how to be vulnerable and recognize when you have somebody that genuinely loves you, that's not there to hurt you. So the Let Me Love You tour is bigger than Valentine's Day.
Well, you said the word tour.
Yes.
What's next? Where are we
We
going?
don't know yet.
Okay.
We have a couple of cities pulling on us. We may go back home. I'm from Springfield, Ohio, born and raised, so we may hit that area next, or we might go. Atlanta loves us as well, so we've been to Atlanta before. So once we announce it, we will make sure we'll come back and talk to 92 Kels.
Hey, let us know.
But again, thank you for coming. Thank you for sharing your story.
Thank you for having me.
The foundation, the program that you're doing is great. Absolutely great. Very well needed.
Thank you.
So I'm looking forward. Very excited to see great
Are
things
you guys
come from
coming?
it.
I'm actually gonna
Y'all see how I threw that in there, right?
No,
Yes.
so this is I thought it was gonna be later. So I actually might be able to slide through. I'm doing a Galentine's Day thing. For the single folks show.
Okay.
Shout out to us.
Okay. y'all gonna be on the building too. It's not just for couples. It's for singles as well.
I don't want to miss my opportunity. Yes. You never know.
You never know.
You never know.
You never know.
No, I might just slide through.
Okay.
So February 14th, which is Valentine's Day, 6:30. Did you hear her? She said, do not
Be late.
be late. Show up in your Valentine's Day best, ready to impress, even if it's for your lover.
That's it.
That's it. And it's going to be at the Hess Club. Give us the address one more time.
It's 5430 Westheimer Road.
Okay, perfect. You heard that.
You're kicking it with G on your favorite station.
The perfect station.
92 KELZ, the only station with new music, new artists, new sound.